the most fascinating scientific facts that were silenced. The history of science is not only about brilliant discoveries and Nobel Prizes. It is also about silence, injustice, underestimation, and even deliberate suppression. Today we'll talk about scientific facts and discoveries that few people mention, although they could have changed the course of history much earlier. Get ready, we're about to travel through time, from the 18th century to the present day. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Pioneer of Climate Science, Eunice Foote. In 1856, American researcher Eunice Foote conducted simple yet groundbreaking experiments. She filled glass cylinders with different gases and placed them under sunlight. Foote observed that the cylinder filled with carbon dioxide heated much more than one with ordinary air. She concluded that if Earth's atmosphere contained more carbon dioxide, the planet would become warmer. In essence, she was the first to describe the greenhouse effect. But her work received no recognition. Women in science were not taken seriously at the time, and soon her research was forgotten. A few years later, the English physicist John Tyndall reached similar conclusions, and his name became associated with the discovery of the greenhouse effect. For over a century, the world credited him as the pioneer, while the true merit belonged to Eunice Foote. Chapter 2. Who really discovered cosmic rays? At the beginning of the 20th century, physicists faced a mystery. The air constantly became ionized, as if an invisible radiation were passing through it. Where did it come from? Some believed it rose from the Earth, others thought it came from radioactive minerals. Italian scientist Domenico Pacini decided to test this. He submerged measuring devices underwater and saw that radiation levels decreased. This meant that part of the radiation was indeed coming from above, from space. But worldwide recognition went to another scientist, Victor Hess, who ascended with instruments in a balloon and confirmed the same idea. Hess received the Nobel Prize, while Pacini's name faded into obscurity. His contribution was almost forgotten, even though he was the first to unlock the mystery of cosmic rays. Chapter 3. The first prediction of black holes, John Michell. In the 18th century, English scientist John Michell pondered the limits of gravity. He speculated, what if there existed a star so massive that its gravity would not allow even light to escape? In doing so, he became the first to describe what we now call a black hole. But at the time, the idea was too fantastical. Michell lacked the tools to prove it mathematically, and few took his hypothesis seriously. More than a century later, Einstein's theory of relativity revived the concept. Michell's name only returned to scientific history 2 centuries after his original idea. Chapter 4. Women and the Matilda Effect. For centuries, women in science faced the same injustice. Their discoveries were credited to male colleagues. This phenomenon became known as the Matilda Effect. There are many examples. Rosalind Franklin produced the X-ray images of DNA without which its structure could never have been solved. But the Nobel Prize went to Watson, Crick, and Wilkins. Lise Meitner played a central role in the discovery of nuclear fission, yet the award went to Otto Hahn. Jocelyn Bell was the first to detect pulsars, but recognition went to her supervisor. These stories repeated again and again. Women's names remained hidden in the shadows for decades, even though their work shaped the future of modern science. Chapter 5. Science under ideological pressure, Lysenko and Vavilov. In the 1930s, Soviet agronomist Trofim Lysenko rose to power. He rejected genetics and claimed that plants could inherit acquired traits. His theories had no scientific foundation, but they fit well into political propaganda. Lysenko gained government support, while genuine geneticists faced persecution. Nikolai Vavilov, one of the greatest biologists of the 20th century, was arrested and died in prison. For decades, genetics in the Soviet Union was banned, and the country lost precious years of progress. This story reveals what happens when politics dictates science. Chapter 6. Why many scientific studies are false. Even today, science faces serious challenges. In 2005, scientist John Ioannidis published a paper titled "Why Most Published Research Findings Are False." He showed that because of small sample sizes, statistical errors, and the pressure to publish sensational results, many studies turn out to be unreliable. This problem is especially common in medicine and psychology. Headlines proclaim groundbreaking discoveries, yet when researchers attempt to replicate the studies, the results often fail. Science is not a set of eternal truths, it is a process of searching, where errors are inevitable. Chapter 7. Silence Stories in the Soviet Union. The suppression of science also deeply affected Soviet researchers. Geologist Vera Baltz, for example, was imprisoned in labor camps. Even there, she continued to write, study, and research. Yet for decades her name was erased from history. Countless other scientists were repressed, their work destroyed, their discoveries lost. Only now are we beginning to restore their names and acknowledge their contributions. We often imagine science as an unstoppable march forward. But in reality, it has always been a struggle against prejudice, against injustice, against politics. We recalled the women whose work was credited to others. The scientists whose ideas were far ahead of their time. The researchers whose names were left out of textbooks, even though they deserved recognition. And those whose lives and work were cut short by repression. The history of science is not only about triumphs but also about silence. To truly understand how science developed, we must also remember the voices that others try to suppress.